note into your Patreon.
Oh, okay, cool. Thanks. Awesome.
It's sub on Heathen, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So, hey, hello, everybody. So, it's been a long time since I've done one of these. Let me double check.
Sub on Heathen, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So, hey, hello, everybody. So, it's been a long time since I've done one of these. Okay, so somebody, because I have my volume on mute. Hey, hello, everybody. So, it's been a long time since I've done one of these. Okay, so somebody, because I have my volume on mute. Did it stop? Animus, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got to do a thing.
Oh, okay, that's you? All right. Okay, all right, sorry about that.
I forgot to mute the YouTube window. Did that fix the problem? Did it fix somebody? Stephanie was saying something about robot animist. I don't know what that means.
Oh, that's robot animus is when your voice starts to go kind of robot-ish. It usually happens when there's kind of a bad connection.
Yeah, it's like feedback. Okay.
Yeah, but I think it was the echo that I was trying to isolate, and I think you're okay. So Leon, I muted you. I think it's on your end. Do you have headphones? I'll let him get that worked out.
Yeah, we got to remind him to mute the volume on the YouTube feed.
Yeah, because I thought I didn't mute mine, and then I realized, oh no, I am muted. So
no, it was me. I forgot. He's not only losing his hair, he's losing his mind.
Oh, you haven't lost all your hair yet?
You know, it's a little thin, but you know, it's not like a pattern thing.
Because mine, it went to the edges, you know, in the back of my head.
Uh-huh.
And it's just stopped there. It didn't keep going. So.
Oh, okay. So you got the Picard fringe.
Yes, but you know the funniest
thing
is I started going bald like in my 20s.
Yeah, that's normal.
Is it really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. If it's like the genetic male pattern baldness, that usually starts in the 20s and takes about, 10 to 20 years to run its course.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's pretty normal, I think. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I thought I was an unusual special case. I guess I'm not.
Well, you are a special case.
I'm an unusual special case in a different way.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get this other window.
So Leon, I don't know if you've ever met Animus, but Animus Leon Animist.
Hi, I'm this strange character who shows up on the internet sometimes.
So I muted you, Leon. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I meant Leon. You should be able to unmute yourself. Yeah.
I did. I just wired my headset, so just switch off Bluetooth real quick, and there we go.
Okay.
Am I better?
Yeah. Now we can hear you, and there's no echo. Perfect. Thanks, Leon.
Anytime.
Yeah. So Leon's a new one of my new Patreons, and I've gotten 2 more in the past. It's weird. It's like I don't do videos, and I started getting Patreon. Maybe somebody's trying to tell me something. Like, look, we'll give you money to just stop making videos.
Well, you've got an incredible backlog catalog, and you've got all the clever stuff and the funny stuff, and my favorite, the batshit crazy zone. I love the batshit crazy zone.
Yes.
And the doll.
And
Well, I forgot about the doll, the running doll gag.
Mm-hmm.
Is that show me on the doll where the pagans hurt you? That kind of or where
I gotta figure out. You can't use a gag over and over again, at least in my opinion, because sometimes it gets a little monotonous. You have to kind of like figure out when to slap it in there.
Yeah, it has its moments.
Yes. So let's see who we got. We got Stephanie. Stephanie, you need to get on Twitter. And we got Sean. Don't know who that is. We got Witch Forever. Hey, Witch, how's it going?
There's a Matt
and
Witch.
We got Baked Jesus. Hey, Baked. And Mad Witch is here. Hey, Mad. Mad is on a rather permanent camping trip.
Aren't we all? I've moved so much. I don't even think of, I don't even use the word home anymore.
Just live in and out of a box.
Basically, I mean, the place I'm in now, I didn't even. I'm living with one of my cousins at the moment, and I didn't even unpack my stuff. It's all just stacked around the room here and in plastic totes because I knew I wouldn't be here all that long, and I'm getting moved again.
Wow. Yeah, I really hate moving. It's like if I can, I don't like to move.
Yeah, it's kind of the nature of the beast with me, apparently. I lived in one place for like 6 years once.
Mm-hmm.
It was very strange. No, it was like 7 years almost. It was really strange. It was like living somewhere.
It was like living somewhere. Wow.
Yeah, it was.
What a concept.
Yeah, I know there's all these other people spend their whole life in one building or whatever, and it's just not been my, it's not my kind. It's not what we do for the most part. We tend to be kind of mobile. Mm-hmm. And probably next week I'm going to be moving again.
Wow.
Yeah, it'll be my 4th place in 1 year, but I think I'll be there for a while. I'm getting moved down to South Carolina, of all places.
Ooh, not the best place to be right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I know they've got storms going on. We got to wait for the hurricanes to go by to see if it's safe to go down there. But there's going to be some, the Cherokee are down there, and there's national parks, national forests.
And it seems like, especially in the southeastern part of the United States, it seems like hurricanes are becoming a regular event.
Oh yeah, the ocean temperature that climate change thing. The ocean gets a little bit warmer and it spawns a lot more storms. Just a little bit of water warming is all it takes. A couple of degrees.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they don't say climate change is real. No, I think something's going on.
Yeah. Well, when after Dixie has their 15th hurricane in 2 years or whatever, they may start changing their tune.
Yeah.
Because that's where the people live who don't believe in it, and they're the ones getting pounded by multiple hurricanes every year. Exactly. I won't call it justice, but but it is ironically. It is a bit ironic.
Or they'll say that God's pissed at some person and go on about their lives.
Yeah, exactly. It's because of the gays. God is punishing us because of the gays. That's what it is.
I forgot. They actually do that down there.
Oh yeah, they actually believe that. There was some preacher who said something similar to that. I can't remember who it was.
Punishing God's people for being so tolerant.
What I find kind of funny is that there's this. I watch, because I'm a sadist, to myself, right-wing watch, and there's this woman there, Cat something, that says that she has authority over the storms. And I was saying to myself, not even us witches are that arrogant. I mean, we work with the elements, but we're not that stupid.
Yeah, well, everybody likes to, in my opinion, it's like they're always trying to take advantage of something. So if it's in the news, they want to take advantage of it and somehow push their agenda. It's the same thing with, the videos that I do on people who are talking about whatever it is, and somehow it comes around to the reason is because you have sinned in the eyes of God and you have to repent. It's like that's what it all comes down to, It's like stop pushing your fucking agenda,
Yeah, it gets really vulture-y. The vultures come out of the woodwork whenever something significant happens or something bad happens to someone else.
Exactly. Let me see.
But
I had to review a message.
But people in my tradition mostly have an official position on weather, and it is we don't control it, we can't change it. That's our official position, and we're standing by it. Don't ask us.
Yeah, really. Well, especially when it comes to weather. I mean, I understand that there's many cultures that have that have done, you know, for example, rain dances. I mean, obviously they're trying to do something to get the rains to come. But, you know, as far as I think trying to manipulate weather beyond like maybe a local range is just asking for trouble, you know.
Yeah, those guys have a long-standing tradition of working openly with that, but you know, they're doing rain dances in practically a desert area. They're not going to piss anybody off if the rain comes, you know.
Right, exactly.
Whereas if you call down a storm in the middle of farm country, yeah, some little kid's birthday party might, you know, get messed up, or you might destroy $10 billion worth of crops. So it's considered bad politics to try weather magic, you know, in these kind of areas.
Yeah. Which kind of brings me to the topic that I was thinking we could discuss. And that is, I don't know if you saw any of the tweets or anything on Facebook or videos about the Sephora witch kit. Did either one of you hear about that?
No.
No?
I didn't understand what you said. Even Sephora witch kit? What?
Yeah, so there was a company named Sephora, I think it was. What they did was they created this little witch kit that was geared towards, you know, young teenage girls. And it was a witch kit that had a tarot deck in it. It had a bundle of sage, you know, for burning to smudge, and then a whole bunch of various perfumes that Sephora, the company, SEPHORA, put out. And so they put this witch kit together, and I think it was around $40. And everybody had a different opinion of it. Some people thought it was a great idea. Some people were just kind of like me. They were just kind of like, blah, whatever. It's just another marketing thing. And then there were some other people who really felt it was kind of like, it was irresponsible and kind of normalizing witchcraft and all this stuff. And I don't know. So the way I thought about it, or way that I approached it, was this goes all the way back to, you know, you can go back in history and see various times where, like the very first time witchcraft was written about in a book, you know, somebody was probably, oh no, they're printing about witchcraft and they're normalizing it and it's out of the closet. And the same thing happened with Gerald Gardner when he was becoming popular and he was talking to newspapers, and his fellow coven mates were like, you know, you've got to slow down on this. You can't go out there and publicize Wicca. And it's and then another example, most recent one would be, for example, the Raven. What was her name? Raven. Shit.
Sarah Ravencroft.
No,
Sarah
yeah.
Ravenwolf.
Silver Ravenwolf. When she put out her witch kit, and it had, you know, it was a little portable teenage witch kit, and it had all these various witchcraft implements in it. And people had an outrage over that. So what are your thoughts on that? What about you, Leon? What do you think?
I honestly say, as long as it's done, use this word with marketing, intelligently, I'll see no problem. Witchcraft and Wicca has really gone so mainstream that I think it should be. Oh, sorry, my words are all over the place. In my opinion, it should, yeah, like a tarot deck or perfume, something like that. But sage, no. I mean, at least have a booklet come with it. Say this is what it does. This is what you're supposed to do with it. Instructions. Come with instructions. Alfonder, and help me here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I actually don't know. Maybe if somebody in the chat knows about it, maybe they can. But I don't know if it came with an instruction book or not. I'm assuming if it came with a tarot deck, that it at least would have had like a little booklet talking about the tarot, like, you know, like most decks. Like when I bought my Rider-Waite deck, there was a little thing that came with it, a little instruction booklet. I'm assuming that most
actually
tarot decks
have that booklet close by in my mess.
Stephanie in the
but-
chat. Oh, sorry.
Go on.
Oh, Stephanie in the chat was saying that it's not going to get released now. Apparently, she's heard about it. She's way more in touch with like popular culture than I am.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to lead up to, is that after the outcry that from a lot of the, I'm assuming the pagan community, although it wasn't specified, they decided, the company decided to not produce them. So, I mean, actually, I bet that they probably did produce a lot of them, but they decided not to release them. So these kits, so they had a deal with a certain farm that was run mostly by Native American Indians to get the sage, and they also had they had deals with people to distribute this kit, and because of the blowback that they got from the community, they decided to pull it, and they're not going to be releasing it. So a lot of these kits are probably going to go to like Ross or wherever, and then this farm that was harvesting the sage, I don't know if they got to the point where they actually like did one bulk order and gave it to them and got the money for it, or if they got screwed on that because the deal, I mean, I'm sure there was something in whatever contract that they signed with them. I don't know if they're going to get compensated or what's going to happen with it. But I just wanted to give people's feedbacks on what they think about that, because it's going to happen again. Somebody else is going to come up with something and people are going to be offended by it. But it's also, is it our right to judge and say that this kit is going against who we are? I mean, are we to that point in paganism where we're starting to restrict who can practice our religion and who can't?
I'm conflicted because one of our tenets of the pyramid, if you still go by that, is be dare, is it to dare, to know, to learn, to silent. Isn't that pretty much one of our laws, is to be silent, to teach those worthy?
Oh my God, Leon, you make me want to start making videos again. So I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy who's telling all you witch ones out there how you shouldn't practice. But that comes from Eliphas Levi's Transcendental Magic, and it was the Sphinx. It was the 4 powers of the Magi, which was granted adopted by some people, witchcraft, and also in Wicca, but that's its origins. That's where it comes from. The people assigned it the pyramid and created the witch's pyramid from that, but that's where it comes from. So those were the 4 the 4 powers of the Magi. So you receive power from knowing, you receive power from daring, you receive power from willing, and you receive power from staying silent. So that's where that comes from. So so that's kind of that's what that is about. But I don't know if necessarily that went against the 4 powers of the Magi. But what are your thoughts on it, Animist?
Well, excuse me. I'm with Stephanie on this. It's way past time for. Basically, it's just Western Europe witches have been, hiding for so long, for so much longer than they had to. And with the way things are now, I don't think there's any reason to be shy, unless there's a personal reason to be shy. A starter, this particular kit you're talking about, okay, that's a marketing thing. They can make a marketing decision about it, whatever. But there's really no reason to hide what you are anymore in general. And there's definitely no one has the right to tell you you don't belong, or you don't get to be a person or a pagan or an independent religious practitioner or whatever. Nobody's got that right. They're just being equal assholes to the fundamentalists. They're just being pagan fundamentalists. You're not a pagan unless you get our stamp of approval. And I come from a tradition where we don't buy that. We don't buy that autocratic bullshit. We just don't. You want to come hunt me down with large caliber weapons and hunting dogs? Give it your best shot, but you better bring both.
Well, I mean, with the mass production of tarot decks that are out right now,
Mhm.
is spirituality really that hidden?
I missed that word you said. What?
Oh, sorry. I said with the mass production of tarot decks that are currently out right now, is spirituality really that hidden? I mean,
Yeah, it's really not that it's not that hidden. It really isn't. The stuff you can buy the cards anywhere. Okay, so somebody put together a little starter kit. They could leave the sage out and I'd be happier. I don't like that stuff.
Yeah.
And both physically, literally, I don't like the way it smells. And I think too many people use it too much instead of learning how to deal with their own environment. Like, it seems like a lot of people just go, oh, there's something happening I don't understand or I'm not comfortable with.
but
Sage my whole house down and drive away all the spirits. Like you can somehow sanitize reality.
Right.
but
I'm not a witch.
but on the other hand, though, yeah, I'm going to go into this and may find it controversial, but giving a starter kit to someone of such a young age without knowing the proper uses of the proper restrictions and the proper consequences of magic. Like, let's go crazy here. Let's say this person got broken, dumped in, let's say high school. They should want to return to magic to get back. Well, that's against I know it's old. It goes with the law of three. So I think it should come with lessons, classes, in essence. Like, here, you want to use a tarot deck, you want to use a sage, but here's how you do it. Here's what it's about. That's just me.
Yeah.
In any endeavor, I mean, children require adult supervision. You know, whether you're teaching, no matter what you're teaching them, whatever craft, you know, could be carpentry. They still need an adult. You know.
Yeah, but so this is the way I look at it, is that I think that we all get into the craft however we get into it, you know. And so for myself, I was introduced to mythology and folklore first, and then that got me interested into studying druidry and my ancestry, and then eventually into witchcraft and Wicca, or Wicca's form of witchcraft. But you never know how somebody might get into it. You know, some people I talked to, like their first introduction was Silver Ravenwolf or Scott Cunningham, or, you know, it was something else, you know. And, you know, there's people that I see on YouTube, you know, they have a very eclectic practice. They have a very unique practice, but all these various things that they use, that they were talking about, come from all these various practices and traditions and cultures. And, you know, but it's the way that they were introduced to it. So I don't know. I mean, they obviously don't understand certain respectful cultural appropriations they might be getting from certain culture, but there's no malice behind it. They're not doing it to be insulting or abusive. They're just using it out of ignorance. And I think that can happen on the mainstream, where kids can think about magic and witchcraft or however they get into it, and they'll use these things in that unintentional kind of non-respectful, or I don't know how to exactly describe it, but they'll get into it without exactly understanding it. But the fact that they're getting into it and looking and searching within themselves for what they believe is their truth, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think anybody who explores whatever they believe to be their quote unquote truth is for them. You know, I don't have any opinion as to whether or not whatever they're practicing is right or just or true, or that's the way I view it. What do you think, Animist?
Oh yeah, I mean, everybody ends up with their own custom cookbook in the end. You know, I mean, you could no matter how rigorous a school you start with, if you keep learning from your environment, you're going to end up bits that come off of other systems that stick to you because they work. I think that's perfectly normal for people to do as they develop as practitioners of anything. I mean, it's not just witchcraft. I mean, it's, you know, like I did martial arts for many, many, many years. And by the time you get to a certain point, you realize, okay, I may be saying I'm teaching this style, but the truth is you're bringing in anything that you found along the way that's useful. You know, it's how you uncover and protect your blind spots. And that's just normal. That's someone who's actually growing and developing. So I don't have a problem with that. And I don't know of very many grownups who have a problem with that. You know, like I said, adult supervision is required for beginners no matter what. Even if you're a 40-year-old beginner, you're better off, you know, because you can make bigger mistakes as a 40-year-old than you can make as a 14-year-old. You know, 14-year-olds are going to screw up. Their hormones and their emotions are going to get them to do stuff they shouldn't be doing. And at some point, somebody might have to step in and sort out the mess and say, okay, look.
Yeah, but Animus, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. But you probably do understand that there's probably a lot of people on the internet who they never had any teacher. Their introduction to whatever they practice was probably maybe a video or a book. And they started getting into it. I mean, what if I'm interpreting what you said correctly? It sounds like somebody has to have a teacher. I mean, do you really think that?
Well, it's really helpful.
It is helpful, yeah.
It's very helpful to have someone, you know, sort out the chaos for you. It's not necessary. I mean, we could reinvent the whole thing from raw cloth if we had to. You could take all the stuff away and we could go back and figure out how nature works, you know? So but you know, 13-year-olds in general benefit from some adult supervision in anything they do. You know what I mean? Just as people, because they're confused little monkeys. And hopefully by the time they're 33, they're less confused little monkeys. But I see it on that kind of time scale. Someone's going to start however they're going to start. You know, like you said, a video, a book. They're going to get, you know, Uncle Bucky's Big Blue Book or whatever and hack their way through it. Okay, fine. If that's the only opportunity they have, that's the opportunity that I have. They may just progress a little slower if they have limited resources. Okay, you know, hopefully you're going to live long enough to just sort it out. So I don't have a problem with that either way. What the kind of information and techniques that they're going to get from sources like that are not going to explode the planet.
Right.
You know what I mean?
At least let's hope not.
I have never seen or heard of anyone dishing out to the public how to explode the planet with magic. You know, it doesn't happen, because at some point, I've said this in some comments before, at some point you get to the part where you're doing stuff that could go boom. And at that point, that's when you have to make new decisions about your practice. You know? Well,
that's one of those super secret spells that we don't want anybody else to know about. Is the blowing up the planet spell.
You know, it's the same, like I said, in my other tradition. I consider martial arts an esoteric tradition as well. And it has a lot of magical principles involved in it, you know, and how you develop your body, mind, spirit. And there's certain techniques that you learn along the way, or certain kinds of practices you learn along the way. And when you learn them, you realize, you know, I shouldn't teach this to 13-year-olds. And nobody does, just because you'll have 13-year-olds accidentally killing each other on the sidewalk. But you don't get to learn that stuff until you've already developed enough judgment to know how to employ them or not employ them or not teach them. So I don't see a threat there.
Yeah. See, it's funny because I was told that they're not going to tell us not to curse or not to cast a spell on somebody to make them fall in love with them. And there was one other one. What was it? Oh, yeah. Or do a spell for wealth, because you're going to do that if you haven't already done that. And so the best way to learn what not to do is by actually not doing it. That's what I was told. And that's the way I look at it too, is that people are going to go out there. They're going to fuck up. They're going to make mistakes, and they're going to learn from those mistakes. So no matter who tells them, like you could have some grand poobah, you know, issue down an edict, you know, thou shalt not, you know, cast a hex on someone or cast a love spell on someone, and that doesn't fucking matter. People are gonna do it anyway, you know. So it's just kind of like that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and I think that almost inevitably for a lot of practitioners, there's an old saga. There's an old Norse saga called Egil Saga, and it's the classic example of this very thing from 1,000 years ago. And it was a girl in the village fell sick, and they had the rune magic up there. A girl in the village fell sick. No one could figure out what was wrong with her. She was pale and languishing and couldn't be woken, and nobody in the village was a master of the rune magic. And so they sent for Egil to come and see what was going on. And when he got there, he used his rune magic to figure out what was affecting her. And it turned out that one of the boys in the village had tried to cast a love spell on her, and he did it wrong. He had scratched the runes badly and did the magic poorly because he was, an amateur. And so the village had to call in a professional to fix the situation. And I think a little bit of that goes on in every person's life, as they develop whatever they develop. But this is nothing new. It's nothing modern. They were talking about this 1,000 years ago in Iceland, And so to me, that's just part of the landscape. That's why I give people a lot of fair warnings. The one thing you want to tell new people is that this may work better than you think, and it may bounce right back in your damn face. And so, watch your step and call for help if you need it. And that's a responsible tradition.
Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to find out, Leon, how you got involved in your path and what brought you to it, and how you label yourself.
It's ironically YouTube. I bounced from teacher to teacher for quite a while. Not mentioning any names, out of respect, but yeah, bounced from YouTube teacher, real life teacher, self practice. Hell, my first true spell was recent. I might have mentioned it in either Loki's or your Discord, but my first amateur spell was for a friend. I forgot the whole ask permission thing, and I thought I did good. A week later, I was sick as a dog, but I learned my lesson. So when I first started learning magic, I was very timid about it. My friend Chris is scared into inaction, and so I thought, okay. So I tried different magical, the cast and circle, and I suck at it. I tried calling the quarters, calling the gods, suck at it. There has to be a way of magical practice I'm actually good at. Apparently, tarot is my thing. There's no fancy circle casting. There's no rituals to memorize. I was like, okay. But now I'm a tarot magician, I guess. Tarot magi? Is that how you say it?
I don't know. Okay, so that's how you label yourself, a tarot magician.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's a fine thing to be. Develop your sensitivities and perceptions and all that. Yeah, if something else comes your way, it seems like a good idea. You can experiment with it. But
one of my weaknesses is I've been practicing, but I cannot read the cards without a book. And though I've just been told you have to learn to read the cards yourself without the book, but it has to be near me. Am I bad at it or something?
Huh?
Am I bad at it for not being able to, like, my steampunk tarot deck? I have to have the book near me at all times.
No, I don't know. I'm really lousy at tarot. So
I had a lot of fun with the tarot, we had a really good time. The dance of the little pictures, but I always had the little waiter, the weight writer, whatever little instruction book there.
The rider weight deck.
Rider weight deck, yeah, the dyslexia. I always kept a book by me too, because sometimes it come up, okay, 6 of cups. What the hell? Just a second. You know, it's the right card, but that doesn't mean it doesn't mean I remember them all. I wasn't, you know, that fanatical about memorizing. The important thing is your divination sensitivity, as far as I'm concerned. If the little notebook, you know, improves your sense of contact or confidence, then have it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way I study tarot is I use the Rider Waite deck, and I look at the symbolism, and the symbolism, especially in the Rider Waite tarot deck, has a lot of connection to the Western occult tradition. So you can kind of look at those, and you see that each card is a story, and so you can use elements of that story in connection with other cards around them to complete the story, you know, as a form of divination. And that's kind of how I learned how to do tarot. So when I, you know, like hear people talking about collecting decks and all this stuff, I have a hard time relating. I mean, I could relate to that, like, as in like collecting decks for aesthetic reasons, but they use all these various decks, and a lot of these decks, the symbolism is different, and it's changed or based on another card, or maybe it has a certain interpretation of it. And so for myself, that's why I don't really consider, because tarot is not like a main focus of my practice. It's kind of like a sub part of my practice. It's like, if anything, my practice probably consists of like 90% meditation, because that's all I do. You know? But that's not the entirety of my practice, but it's just what the majority of what I do in it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to read tarot.
Yeah, I'd rather have someone who's got the sensitivity, but, you know, wants to look up the Cliff's Notes a little bit, much better than having someone who's memorized the whole book and just sucks at reading and can't give anyone a decent piece of advice, including themselves. I mean, I'd rather have the thing that works. You know, my tradition's very practical. We like the thing that works. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but it works. It's a whole different way of you know, of judging something. It's like, can you build a house that doesn't fall over? Okay, that works.
Well, mostly I do sometimes do reading. Most of the times I use tarot for like the aces or the kings of the suits as foci. Like I use the cups or coins, coins, batons, swords, and chalice as the focus for the elements.
Oh, you call clubs batons?
Well, I have the Visconti.
Oh, the Visconti deck. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I read that first. I'm like, okay, where are the names? Where's the numbers? Am I holding it upside down? Because my main deck is the Steampunk Tarot. And it has all the like ace 1, 2, 3, 4. And the Visconti doesn't have that. It has pips. So I'm going for standard of pips. But yeah, I use them basis for focus. I situate it like
like, do you use them as the paths of the Kabbalistic tree?
The what?
Okay. Well, some people they'll use the tarot deck as almost like a form of meditation as they go up the Kabbalistic tree, so that there's 72 paths on the Kabbalistic tree that correspond to 72 suits of the tarot. That's what I thought you were doing. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I could do that. Mostly I use chalice. Chalice, Pinnacle as the goddess, and batons and sword for the god. The elemental aspects of the god and goddess. I don't actually call the gods because I learned that lesson. So I don't think I'm calling on any more gods anytime soon after what happened with the Morgan.
She's a
So-
big deal these days. Everybody's talking to the Morgan these days.
Yeah, yeah, she is
I
very
learned my
popular.
lesson. Of course, when I first started, I almost wanted to call on Hecate, but my friends went, "No, you're not experienced enough to call on Hecate." But is there any gods or goddesses you think a newbie like me should go for?
I would say, research them, find out which ones appeal to you. And, I mean, that's what I always suggest is I'm very much a, you find it yourself type of person. I'm not going to tell you which things you should practice or what you should worship or how you should do it. I'm very much into allowing people to, I think that the most important thing you could do is spend some time on your own doing some self-reflection. Some people look into their culture, their ancestry, find out what is drawn to you. And then from that point, you might find, like, let's say you're attracted to the wilderness and you're attracted to bears. So you might be attracted towards, Artuas or Arthur, So there's various things. If you spend a little bit of time looking inside of yourself and finding out, like, if the ocean appeals to you or nature appeals to you or sky or whatever, and then from there find the gods and the goddesses, the gods or the goddesses, whatever that appeals to you. That's how that's my suggestion.
When I tried to work with Morgan, I began to see a lot of vultures, crows, and ravens. So I thought that was a sign. But then I also thought, well, I'm Dutch, Irish, so Scandinavian. I thought it could be Odin.
Mhm.
And that sounds pretty lofty, but with Human and Moonin, I thought it could be him. But after performing a separating ritual with the Morgan, the crows and ravens stopped. I thought, well, that was it. That's what it was. So I don't know. Every time I think of it, I get a little more discouraged. So sorry bringing this down, but
well, I think that it's I'm trying to think back when I read mythology. There were a couple of gods in Irish mythology which really appealed to me. And then I looked into their stories and finding out more of them. That's how I got close to those particular deities, or the concept of deities at that time. So
I got lost there for a second. Sorry, I was dealing with a nasty little troll in the chat who was just coming in to try to make trouble.
I was wondering. Okay, so did you
me
delete the message?
You gave me the wrench power, so when they
Oh
came,
yeah, I know. I gave you that wrench power. I just wasn't too sure who it was.
Well, if somebody comes in and just starts doing the obnoxious 13-year-old cussing at witches thing, I just hide their message, and then they can come back when they grow up. They're not like banned or timed out, but it's just one of those deals where, we're my tradition. We're not known for being super forgiving of people being deliberate assholes.
Yeah.
So
it's Richie from Boston. So Richie from the Boston. So yeah. So, what a bunch of bitches you are. Well, that's not a good start. So sorry you were timed out, but you're good now. So just be respectful to the people around you, and we'll be respectful back. And if not, well, so you can see. Yeah. Yes, we can see you, Richie.
Yeah, if we really That's one of the good things about having a non-politically correct, nasty old shaman with a wrench. I got no problem bonking some jerk over the head with it. Why not? You should have seen how I grew up, kid.
Yeah, really, exactly.
Hellbound's heard a few of the stories, and he's like, "Your parents actually did that? Didn't they get arrested for that?" It's like, no, that's how they raised kids. That's how they raised boys when I was growing up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a little bit of a shocking childhood there. It's like nobody called Child Protective Services.
Well, they moved me around a lot too to avoid it. There was always another relative who could teach me something new that, hey, I've still got all my fingers and toes. I wasn't that bad of a student. But yes, I was using arc welders when I was 13.
So what were you saying, Leon? You were saying something earlier.
Oh, me? No. I was just saying that's impressive.
Oh, yeah. It's funny because I get these comments from people on my videos, and they'll write like this comment like, "Oh, you witch, you're going to burn in hell, and these people were actually guilty of the crime," and blah, blah, blah. And I'll actually sit there and respond to them like a couple, for a while. And they're like, I can tell that they're like, why don't you just block and delete me? It's like, no, I don't block and delete people. So I'm going to hold your ass to the fire. They're always expecting me to delete their comment. And I just comment right back like, okay. And I'll sit there and dance with them for a while. Okay, you think this, I think that.
They don't understand. Sorry. What they don't understand is that you deal with religious idiots for a living on your video requests. They think they can do anything to you.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because it's nothing new, there must be like a list of like, the top 10 conspiracies of witches, Satanists, and occultists, and it's all there, and so they'll say something to me like, well, what about the West Memphis Three? It's like, yeah, the West Memphis Three pled guilty. They served 17 years. They're, what about it? And then they're like, well, Aleister Crowley's said this about you should commit human sacrifice. And I'm like, yeah, he meant that metaphorically. Your religion is based upon a human sacrifice. And then they'll say stuff like, well, what about Oak Hill, all these people who claim satanic ritual abuse? And what about the Catholic Church and all the kids that are being abused and all the priests are hiding? It's like they keep coming back with these things, and it's like they think that they're saying something new and something original, and it's like, no, it's the same fucking crap I've been hearing over and over again. Nothing new. So that's one of the reasons why I don't block and delete them, because I can just give them the counter evidence.
Well, it's good for your research skills too. You never know; they might come up with something that gives you a new idea for some research. I mean, you take on the professional trolls, people with actual like followers and foundations and shit. Compared to them, some angry teeny bopper in a chat, in a comment, isn't really much of a target.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you train them better. Maybe you make them better at it. Hey, that Schnoblin guy's going to go away eventually. He's going to need a replacement in that community.
Oh no!
Somewhere out there is somebody drinking blood and eating communion wafers, trying to see if they can make a living off it.
Yeah, really. Well, let's see. Well, Bill Schnoblin lived off of human blood for 18 months. Maybe it'll work for me. Yeah, good luck with that, kid. After a couple of days when you're in the ER, maybe you'll realize how ridiculous that is. It's like there's people who actually believe that Bill Schnoblin is telling the truth. I'm like, oh my God, are you gonna?
There's a reason he's called BS.
Yeah, right, exactly. Exactly.
Now, Stephanie was asking about family curses. I'm not sure what that means.
Family curses.
What do you mean by that, Stephanie? What do you mean by a family curse?
Well, I don't know. She'll have to clarify, because there's actually a Christian conspiracy that believes that people live under generational curses. So that means that, like, they believe that because their great grandfather or whatever was in the Freemasons, or somehow that they brought about some great grand curse from God upon them, and this is a generational curse, and it's tied to satanic families. Is that what you mean, or are you talking about something else?
Well, that's in the Old Testament, the idea of multiple generations of dishonor or curse, being cursed. That is in the Old Testament. That was what people believed in that area at that time.
Right.
You know, given what we know, it would be pretty easy for someone to heal that. You know, you don't have to take it. That's not something that's real hard to get yourself out from under, is what I'm thinking. At least from my point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everybody knows my position. Well, actually, I don't know. What do you think, Leon?
I'm kind of drawing a blank on this subject. That I have no expertise or knowledge of it.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's a generational curse, it's concerned.
Yeah. So I don't believe in generational curses. I think that you can curse someone in the moment, but it doesn't last for very long. So either it's accomplished its goal or it doesn't. I don't believe that it hangs around. I don't think it goes from generation to generation. I think it pretty much ends after a certain period of time. I don't know exactly how long. I've never been able to figure that out. But yeah, that's so. I don't believe that you can do generational curses. What do you think about that, Animist? Or was pretty much what you talked about the Bible your response to that?
Well, that's just a place where I know it from, where it would get into the popular consciousness. I mean, it's a running idea in a lot of traditions, but I think most people, if they have a problem with with what seems like a family curse, it's either because these ideas came from before there was modern medicine and people knew about genetics, you know, and so genetic disorders would pass down through families, and also people tend to have the same kind of problems when they continue to be the same kind of asshole as their grandparents were. And that's certainly, in a metaphorical way, a family curse, because they keep raising their kids to be the same kind of asshole and have the same kind of problems. But that doesn't require magic to explain it. That's just, you know, if you keep exhibiting that behavior pattern, you're going to keep having the same kind of problems. I kind of go science-y on that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I know that, like, you and I have different ways of looking at magic and how it works, and we've had numerous talks on this, which is good. I mean, I always enjoy especially talking with you about that, because you do have such a different opinion than me. I think it's really good to to hear a side of different opinions on magic, because I think magic is a very fascinating topic. You know, I've heard people who take it all the way from the very airy-fairy type of anything goes, all the way down to like a very pragmatic, purely psychological effect, you know. So you actually, there's a lot of people who have a lot of various different opinions about it, all the way down. That's, you know, the fill between those two gaps, you know. And I don't know, maybe one day some scientist will be able to figure out a way to put magic under a microscope and say, oh, well, this is how it works, and this is, you know, and actually be able to figure it all out. You know, up until that point, you know, your guess is as good as mine, you know, until we can actually measure it, observe it, and, you know, maybe even redo it, you know.
Yeah, then we really do have to worry about somebody building a generator that would magically explode the planet. You know, good Lord, don't let the lab guys tinker with that machine. You know, but no, I think it's good to deliberately seek out all these kind of ecumenical, or, you know, spectrums of faiths and beliefs, because then after that, when you're having a discussion or you're dealing with other people who are from something closer to your own tradition or within your own tradition, then the little tiny differences between you and them really don't seem like much when you've really seen somebody who's doing it, totally different. Like, if you do the thing the anthropologists like to do is like go down and badger South American natives and suck wacky plant juices and trip out. After that, the difference between a Lutheran and a Methodist doesn't seem like much. Once you've gone that far down the rabbit hole somebody else's way. So I think it's good for the community in general to have these kind of discussions, or hear these just radically different ideas on how this stuff works, because it keeps people from getting too narrow-sighted, I hope.
I do have a quick topic discussion.
Okay.
I've been wrestling with this question for some time after performing my last spell. When is the proper time to cast or use magic? For someone's need or your own? I've been wrestling with that question for some time. Or just because you want to?
Well, I don't go by schedules myself. Some people are real into their moon phases, and that works for them, and it helps organize their practice. And I think some of those schedules are good for helping you have a well-rounded practice, that you're paying attention to things like the seasons and all that. But on a day-to-day basis, I pretty much walk around with a trippy head full of this stuff, but I'm a shamanist. We tend to be very immersive. Other people are more comfortable with having their special place, their special time, their special symbols. And I think you just have to go where it works for you and where it keeps you balanced. So I can appreciate the schedules thing, because it can keep you remembering that your practice isn't all just about your moods. You actually have to take time to look at these different aspects that come around with the calendar. I think that's a good thing in witchcraft. From the outside looking in, going, "Hey, you guys do that. That's pretty cool." That's glad you're reminding yourselves of that, and that it's not just all about gimme, 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 because some people fall into that trap and then just become a huge pit of take.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting a tightrope to walk. And the reason why I say it's a tightrope to walk is because if we look back on our history of, the pre-Christian pagan religions and pagan paths and pagan beliefs, there was a very strong emphasis on, obviously, the supernatural and the other world. Out of that, we believe that we could control the weather, we could control the crops, we can control all these various things by doing these various rituals or practices or superstitions or mythologies or whatever. So we practiced that way for a long time, and then I'm sure people discovered that, hey, it's not so much that the tide comes up because of this, it actually comes up because of the moon phase. There's records of people in Greece creating very fantastical things, from very technological things, and they were in praise of the gods, but they were done in for example, they had a way of steam powered opening the doors of a temple by placing a coin on a little pot. So you'd place a coin on this pot, and that would trigger steam, and the steam would open the doors to the temple, so that then they would go into the temple. Now, to the observer, that would be magic. That would be amazing. How did these doors open? Nobody was there to open the doors. But this was a way for the priest to sort of play off of the superstitions that the people had, because they knew what was going on. So it's kind of interesting to look at it from the perspective of, this is what we actually believe, or this is what we sort of know isn't, but it's kind of the way that we do things. We kind of practice it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with, say, doing rituals only on the full moon, but if you believe that it's the only time it's actually going to work for you, that's a misconception. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in our practice that is part of ritual that affects us on an emotional level. It affects us on a psychological level, regardless of whether you believe spirits and magic or all this other stuff works. A part of it is our own imagination and our own psychology. And I think that that's one of the lines that I've always walked between, is that the line of imagination and fantasy, and that line of working with the tangible and the evidence-based, you know, these two sides of the coin. And that's not exactly too sure where I'm going with this, but that's kind of how I look at magic and ritual. And did we lose somebody? I hear a lot of static.
Just been listening.
Okay. I kind of went on a tangent there, but hopefully it was cohesive.
Oh, it was. It's a good thing, and to recognize is there's a line of discovery. You know, we've got certain stuff that we know that was just very mechanically. We understand how, you know, a lot of stuff works very mechanically. You know, we know why the blue mold kills the bacteria so we don't die of an infection. You know, we don't need, that's not mysterious anymore. Mm-hmm. But there's still an awful lot about the workings of nature and the connections, the very complex, subtle connections in nature that we don't have that for. There's still an awful lot about just something as apparently obvious as a forest, how that works. You know, the botanists are trying to unravel it, but it's still at this point basically using magic talk, you know, for how the trees and the fungus and all the little creatures all interact with each other. So there's still a lot of mystery out there. And when the science doesn't have it covered, if you want to take part in your world in that way, that's where the magic is. And it may not work the way you think it's working, but if it's working, it's working. Even if it's not why you think, you know, it's just experience. Hopefully, eventually, you can turn experience into science.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'll respond to this comment. Steve McRae, owner of the GDC, he was mentioning going on to the show to do a curse. I'm not going to go on to a show to do a curse. The entire reason why you want to do that is because you want to challenge my particular belief. I'm not into that. And I'm just going to tell you this right now, Steve. I have respect for everyone, regardless of whatever their beliefs are. If you want to invite me onto your show to embarrass me or prove to me that, oh, hey, look, magic isn't real, I'm not interested, Steve. So you can email me, but you know, I'm getting a little sick of these people going around talking about how, you know, I'm growing tired of it. You know, you obviously don't believe in anything that is non-evidence-based or non-fact-based, and that is fantastic for you. I'm very, very happy for you. But you don't need to come here trying to fish to people to drag onto your show so that you can embarrass them in front of all your little troll friends and go, oh, looky, this is the way you should live, is fact-based, evidence-based. That's fine. Go live that way. Just, you know. But
it's not wise to be arrogant and so forth.
No, it's just, no, what it is it's just like, I have all these various circles that I'm a part of, and I enjoy going on to people's shows and listening to them and interacting with them. But I have faith-based beliefs that I completely understand are subjective. They're completely subjective. There's no objectivity to them. There's no scientific facts to them. And I still hold these beliefs. Obviously, because you are a fact-based, evidence-based person, somehow you can't put those two things together, and that's fine. I understand that. But, you know, there's the world holds more than two opinions and two beliefs. And, you know, hopefully you'll understand that.
Well,
So I respectfully email me, Steve, and we'll talk about that. And maybe I can come onto your show and perform some kind of a little miracle that obviously isn't going to happen. And then everybody can laugh at me. And then we can go back to living our lives. How about that?
well, two things looking. One, sorry for being arrogant back there, but I have a lot of friends in my circle who are fact-based and both atheists, and you know I'm cool with that. I welcome them actually, and some of them actually know that I'm a witch or Wiccan, and they're fine with that too. So I welcome anyone who is fact-based, and even though I've been ridiculed before for my practice, I go, I have no problem with that. So you find me silly. But there's parts of you that I find silly. So
I like watching everybody's eyes do like 57 rollovers in their eye sockets when I tell them that shamans are basically atheists.
really?
Oh yeah, that freaks some people right out. Like, that's impossible. Wait, what? How does that? What? How does that work? How is that possible? They're like, because we deal with nature. We deal with what works. What I've found about a lot of people who are trying to say that they're basically mechanistic or that they try to pass off as evidence-based is that they have a poor understanding of physics and emergent properties. And so anything that they can't put a paperclip on, they say doesn't exist, while their very own personal identity as an animal is a completely scientifically not understood emergent property of a whole bunch of different, you know, a couple 100 billion cells, none of which have any of the properties of a creature's full consciousness.
mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm pretty happy to, you know, go around thinking of myself as this being that has a coherent consciousness without, I don't require that science already have it figured out how that works. They know it's an emergent property, and that's where it becomes a black box. And
yeah,
so,
I mean, I understand completely how people can have that opinion and that worldview, and I think that that's a very effective, and I think it's also a very it's essential for humans to take a logical approach to things and not allow evidence or things to come in that really can't be proven, because then you open up the floodgates for anything, you know, anything and everything to come through. And you kind of like, okay, there has to be a filter at some point. So I completely understand having that filter. But I also believe that maybe science will figure it out one day, that religious people's brains work differently than people who are non-religious. And I think that there's different, I don't know if it's maybe genetic or if there's some evolution. I don't know what's behind it, but we need the creative aspect of human beings as much as we need that other aspect of human beings who are like, nope, I don't believe it. Got to be evidence for it, you know, otherwise no go. So it's two sides of the same coin. And I think that is something that maybe in the next 100 years, 200 years, or however many years, they'll figure it out that that's the case, that these people just approach life from two different perspectives. And you know, I don't know, maybe that'll happen someday. But that's the way I look at it. And I don't put people down for having crazy beliefs. I think it's kind of weird that they have crazy beliefs, whatever I believe are crazy beliefs. But as long as they're not hurting anybody and nobody's getting harmed from them, I don't see what's wrong with that. Now, if people do get harmed from it, yeah, then that's a problem. Like if people start saying that they're not going to vaccinate their children, or they're going to try to pass a law to make abortion illegal again, or make gay marriage illegal because it goes against their beliefs, then I think it's a problem, because now you're imposing your beliefs and your will upon other people. And that's not right.
Speaking of that,
Another hard pill to swallow is, on the other hand, what gives you the right to, judge what people's beliefs they can and they cannot practice? I mean, it really cuts both ways.
Yeah, I think people should be more busy doing what they're doing and less busy worrying about what everyone else is doing. Like you mentioned, things that become a public health threat or child endangerment. Okay, we've got laws for that. That's a purpose of law. But like the whole anti-vaxxer thing, which is totally based on fraud.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to keep your kids at home and not send them out to endanger the public, okay, but if you're going to send your kids to a public school, they better have their shots. It's really not that difficult a thing to sort out. It's not a spiritual matter.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, someone in the chat may have to fact check me on this, but for what I've read, there's a governor race in Oklahoma, GOP governor, who is an anti-vaxxer, who is into science. And I think that is extremely dangerous. I'm not saying that him being anti-vaxxer should disqualify him for running for governor, but I hope he gets destroyed and maybe he'll learn that, well, my beliefs are stupid, might as well learn something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then, well, if you're a politician, you should follow the separation of church and state. This is something that, I mean, you serve the people. You don't serve your opinion. You don't serve your religion. You serve your people. And that's what a politician should do. That's one of the reasons why there's a big fight not to have the 10 Commandments in front of the courthouse or a courthouse or any courthouse. And it's really, we should keep we should keep the church out of the state. We definitely need that. If you go into the role of a politician, you have to think of everyone. So your opinion, your beliefs, and your religious leanings, you can't allow that affect your job. Now, does it actually creep in and does it affect politicians? I'm sure it probably does, and that's unfortunate. It should be that way, and they should really emphasize that. But people, a politician, if they hold those beliefs, that's really stupid. But they can still hold the belief, but the science is behind it. I'm not willing to eliminate the police force saying that, oh, well, magic will protect us. No, the police force, we need them. They're there for a reason, and it's the same thing with vaccines. Vaccines serve a good purpose. They save lives. And if 0.1% of the population is allergic to the injection, well, that's a 0.1% chance that does happen. And, if you go under for a surgery, there is a 0.1% chance that you might not wake up alive,
That's actually like 1 in 2,000 people.
Yeah, it's very, very rare, but it does happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually not a super tiny slice of the population. Some of them never find out because they never have to be under general anesthesia. But a few years ago, there was a girl in Los Angeles, of course, who went in for cosmetic surgery, of course, and they put her under anesthesia for what was supposed to be like a 45-minute procedure, and she just died. Her body couldn't take being under anesthesia, and she was unrevivable. and it was really tragic. But it just shows, you know, that can happen. But you sure wouldn't want the surgery without the anesthesia.
Exactly.
I've had a 9.5-hour surgery that I was glad I wasn't awake for. They had all parts of my guts out on the table.
Mm-hmm. And the way I look at it is that, okay, from a Christian perspective, let's just put this out there. If God created man, and God obviously gave us a brain, gave us emotions, gave us all these things, whatever we do with our brains, whatever we invent, whatever we create, all these things is essentially in line with God, because that's what God created. God created us. So I've never understood this concept or this idea that Christians put forward, that somehow, like, you can't feel this way, or you can't think this way, or you can't have this opinion because it goes against God. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. You know, it's just putting, like, if I was going to create a Christian argument from that point, you know, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So all the space exploration, all the look into vaccines and all the stuff that has extended our life greatly. Like 500 years ago, life expectancy was like 30, you know, or 25, if that, you know. And now people have life expectancies of like 75, 80 years. And I'm sure it's probably even higher now.
Well, I noticed that all those people are still driving their cars and using the internet. So, which is how they come to our attention.
Right, exactly.
So, you know, I think that the fact that they have picked one little issue to be a jerk about, just to draw attention to themselves or to their denomination or whatever, I think that can be dismissed very easily with a hand wave. You know, if you want to live in the 5th century BC, invent a time machine, feel free to go back and die of dysentery. I got no problem with that either. If we could send them all back to the century they think life was perfect in, I'd be happy to let them go. Meanwhile, they're still running around being part of the modern world and pretending they're not. And as far as I'm concerned, they're just up to their eyes in bullshit. So, you know, they do not require a response from me any more than that. It's like, if you're even on the internet, taking advantage of, you know, modern quantum mechanics to have your voice heard, you better not bitch about what the rest of the advancements that came along with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
good point.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I enjoy about the occult is that there's no. So I don't. Did you silence Jeremy?
No, I didn't. His posts are going up.
Okay, so it was. I think what it is that there's certain keywords that Google is picking up on, and if people type that word, it'll get deleted. Because I noticed Animus didn't delete that one. So anyhow,
some of them come up for review for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. And so,
if they're legitimate, if they're anything like a legitimate post, I say show. If it's obviously that one dude or that other dude, and they're just throwing a bunch of crap into the chat to try to be obnoxious, then I say hide, and it hides. And if they can't do anything else, I put them on 300 seconds of timeout and see how long if 5 minutes later they want to try to be a jerk again. Okay. That's what I've been doing. Just to
it's just
so the people in the chat don't have to look at it. Is this just, you know?
Yeah. Just be careful. I don't think that was you. I think it was Google. So sorry about that, Jeremy. Because Jeremy's he's an old time listener. So
yeah, no, one of his comments came up for review, so I said show because it was a totally legitimate comment.
Okay, but anyhow, so I was beginning to say was that's one of the reasons why I like the occult is because I feel it's a belief system that evolves, and that's what I really enjoy about it. I don't feel like although the roots are very old and very ancient and go back but the way that we practice it today, I don't feel like there's no dogma. There's no, there's nothing that says that, you have to do this, or you can't change this way, or you can't believe that, or you can't accept this. And it didn't say anything about space exploration, didn't say anything about vaccines, didn't say anything about, marriage, doesn't say anything about abortion. It's just a way of practicing and doing things. But, you know, sure, we get people on the internet, myself included, who say that, you know, this is the way to practice, this is the way to do it. But that's my opinion. You know, there's no rule book, there's no law, there's no guiding principle behind it, you know?
Well, yeah, and partly because every time science makes another step forward, that's no longer mysterious. That's no longer occult. We've got that sorted out. So there's no reason to consider that from an occultic point of view. We understand metallurgy pretty well. We understand why some kind of steel is better than some other kind of steel, very technically. So we don't need magic to make the steel better. I mean, presumably you could, and certainly a more experienced blacksmith makes better steel if they want to. But we know why. You know, that no longer requires that kind of divinatory sensitivity to figure out. We know get this metal with this much chromium for this long at this temperature makes this alloy. It's great. And science has that solved, and that's no longer part of the occult. Yeah. And so what we have to do is go out and say, well, what's left? You know, for those of us who are looking into the outside of the line of discovery, or, you know, looking at the fields of mystery out there, you know, is okay, what else is there to try to guide towards? You know, and right now for me, I think a lot of that has to do with the way ecosystems work, you know, the way weather works. Weather is still pretty magical. You know, any of these complex systems and politics, you know, that's all still pretty magical territory. So there's always going to be a place for that. It's just going to be a place that has moved on from the last place.
Yeah, and even the concept of magic, like you and I have such, you know, different opinions on this, and I've met other people who have very different opinions about magic on the internet, and I mean, even that we can't fucking agree on. You know what I mean? It's like,
oh yeah,
and it's there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think we ever have to come to any kind of an agreement, but I think it's fascinating how we can allow that space for, you know, to open to interpretation and belief and practice, you know?
Yeah. And on an issue by issue basis, not on a me versus you basis, you know, because like my concept of black and white magic is so different than what all the modern witches seem to be running around using. But then when I go back to some of the source material, it's what I see, you know, people like Donald Michael Craig were using. And so I'm kind of like, I kind of feel like I'm pissing in the wind to some extent, but motivated to keep doing it when I try to put what I think is a better definition of black and white magic out there. But it's not what other people are using, and I don't require them to change their mind in order to talk to me, just so that we know we have these differences, just so you know what I mean, you know, because I consider growing a garden to be black magic. It's something you've done to change the world according to your will. Whereas meditation is something you do to evolve yourself into what you think would be a better creature. And that, to me, that's white magic. And so building a house is black magic. Meditating and doing exercises is white magic. That's how I view them.
And what are your thoughts on that, Leon?
Well, forgive me, but I don't see how growing a garden can be considered black magic. Maybe that's my ignorance speaking, but if you're growing a garden to help the community or help feed yourself, like for say for some reason we have a depression and we don't have stocks of food to go get, how else are you going to eat? I mean, gardening and farming are really the only ways.
Well, that's the point of that point of view, is that black magic is not evil and white magic is not necessarily good, but black magic is something you do to change the outer world, and white magic is something you do to change yourself. So any kind of learning you do, you know, like studying a topic, that's white magic because you're training yourself. And black magic is anything you do that changes the outer world according to your will, whether it's good or bad. This is a completely different way to divide those two things up. It's very Taoist, except the colors are switched, but it's just a different way to use those terms.
So me sending healing out to heal my friend's arm is black magic?
Yeah, if you're affecting someone else or the environment, then that would be by a functional difference, a functional definition. that would be black magic. And you know, there's sources for that. It's something that's gone back and forth. I think the black is evil, white is good is so subjective in so many ways that that's not a useful way to look at those, to use those terms, or to look at magic itself. And some of this has to do with the fact that in order to, like you said, you grow a garden, you create food, but the whole time you're growing your garden, you're weeding, you've torn up the soil beforehand, you've displaced life forms in order to put other life forms in their place so that it produces something that you want. That is enforcing your will upon reality. And so when you look at it that way, it both has a kind of honesty about the nature of willpower, and it doesn't fall into this weird sliding scale morality of what's good or evil to do. It's describing skill sets. And so, yeah, a lot of people are not used to hearing it done that way, but back in the day, 40 years ago, when we were all kids, back in the dark 16th century, that was the more occultic way to look at it.
I do have an example. This may sound, I'll just say it, it's not sound pathetic, but a couple of years ago when I was going in, like a couple weeks before my hernia surgery, I'm an avid gamer, as you can probably see in my icon. But when I was playing Guild Wars 2, I made a promise to myself that I would get this certain item in this game before I go into my surgery. And I put so much energy and so much willpower into this, into myself, into this game, this item, that I got it on the day that I was going to go into my surgery. And it's not a sense magic. It's putting my will into this task, I guess, to produce change. Is that as sad and pathetic as it sounds? Is that a form of magic in your example?
Sorry, I spaced a little bit for a minute. Could you just like redo that real quick? I literally, my attention just got zapped by a seizure there real quick. Every once in a while I have these.
Oh, it's okay. I'll do it again. Before my hernia surgery, I got deep into playing Guild Wars 2, and I was working on this legendary item. The legendaries in Guild Wars 2 are extremely time-consuming and task-heavy, and I said to myself, I would get this item, I would chant it myself, I chanted, I'll get this item, I'll get this item before my surgery. And the day of my surgery, the morning, actually, at 4:32 a.m., I remember the exact time, I claimed it. And I was throughout the entire... My mom actually walked in and me chanting that over and over and over until I got it. Is that a form of magic in terms of willpower?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, you're developing your dedication and your willpower to accomplish a task. From my point of view, that's an exercise of white magic, that developing that discipline. So yeah, I'd say that's a function of it, and that's something that everybody does every day. You know, hopefully, you know, the ones who aren't completely lazy. But yeah, no, setting yourself a focused task to accomplish, you know, that's very much a magical intention to hold yourself to that. I mean, it's not science, you know, that's something that you've done with your willpower, with your own consciousness. So I'd call that white magic.
I think the division of black and white magic is just so, it's really so clumsy and outdated. It really doesn't do any benefit. I mean, we all understand that there are certain things that we can do that are right, and there's things that we can do that are wrong. Like, it's wrong to go around killing people. It's wrong going around stealing. It's wrong going around raping. It's wrong to do these various things. But other than that, morality on a certain level is a little more subjective. Like, you know, what is to say that it's wrong to prevent or stop or impede or jail or somehow prevent somebody from doing an act of violence towards another person. You know, if you use physical force to defend yourself, I mean, is that black or white? I mean, is that right or wrong? I mean, that's why I really don't like the concept of black and white, because I think it just puts such a kind of arbitrary, excessive restriction upon actions. Like Animus was saying, you know, you go to till the soil and you're disturbing the land, you're disturbing the insects, you're really imposing your will upon that land to force it to grow whatever it is that you want grown there. You know, that's not how the natural land would be. Left alone, that land probably would have, you know, maybe a tree would have grown there or whatever. So it is kind of subjective, but I also understand the importance of having that sort of moral understanding. Like, if you go around cursing everybody, is that what you want to do? You know, I mean, is that how you want to spend your time? You want to just run around cursing people, you know, imposing your will upon other people? And so the idea of morality gets tied into this concept of black and white. But it's, you know, it's really, I hate to say it, but it's rather subjective to the individual, and it's your morals are probably based upon your upbringing, your culture, and the way that with the other morals laws that we have in place. You know, we know it's morally wrong to I'm trying to think of an example that we did in the past. Okay, so it's no longer morally right to stone adulterers. We don't do that anymore. There was a time where it was, and it's not, you know, outlawed in the Bible. It's actually suggested in the Bible, but now we don't do that. You know, adultery, I think, is really a crime in only a certain states. I could be way off on that.
There's still a couple.
Huh?
There's a couple that still have old unenforceable laws on the books.
Okay, all right. So there are some states that still have it. So, you know, it's really subjective, but I think that we should have an understanding of respect and an element of morality, and I think that that's at the heart of the concept of, you know, the any harm none, do as you will. There's this understanding that we have a personal responsibility to act in accord and in a way that would, you know, not go against our own moral codes. You know, like there are certain types of magic that I just wouldn't do on other people, that I just feel, unless I was absolutely had no other choice left, I would probably do it. But that's my own moral code. It's not because I was trained in, you know, the Wiccan Reed or whatever. It's just that that's how I am. I don't go up to people randomly on the street and thrust a knife into their heart and kill them because I think that they deserve it. You know, we have police, we have courts, we have judges, we have all these people in place to do exactly that. I don't have to do it. It was one of the things that I got so upset about, people talking about Brock Turner, and people were doing magic against Brock Turner. And it's like, we have judges, we have courts, we have jurors, we have a whole legal system dedicated to determining what level of guilt somebody is guilty of, and then weeding out punishment based upon what we've been doing for centuries. And if people are not happy with a particular judgment, well, they didn't have access to all the information. You know, if we just run around just going upon our own belief, our own idea that so-and-so should be punished to death, and then we did that and killed the person, I mean, what kind of a society would that be? And it's the same thing with magic. You have to understand what is ethical and what is unethical. And really, I guess the only way you can determine that is through your own judgment, your own sense of right and wrong.
You brought up.
Yeah, I think the morality thing is just a separate question from magic. Magic is about how. It's not about why or your motivation. It's about learning how to make a decision. You're going to have to be led by some other moral principles in how you apply magic. I just think it's important to realize that those are separate questions, which is why I like the definitions that I use, that I actually got from Donald Michael Craig and other older practitioners that I knew when I was growing up who were all about that. You know, they're like, hey, if you hammer two boards together, that's magic. You know, that was how it was done. That was how it was viewed a long time ago. Also, when they talk about the ancient traditions where people are making, you know, they're putting the magic into the making the stone tools, you know, and by magic, they kind of mean their own sensitivity to the elements around them. And so they have more ability to use it. It's not a moral question. You still have to decide what the right thing to do is. The magic is how you do it. That's my viewpoint, basically.
Yeah, and you see, to offer a counter perspective on that, you see, that's one thing I don't put into my practice, because I believe that there should be a very definite on and off switch. So when I go through my daily routine, I get up in the morning and I shower and I cook and I get ready and I go out the door. That everything that I do from that point on is the mundane physical world that I'm in. You know, I'm going around doing all these various things, and I'm, you know, that's just a mundane physical world. However, when I come back home and I sit and relax, and then I take a nice long shower, just kind of wash the day off of me, and then I put on my robes and I go into ritual space, now the switch is immediately on. Now I'm between the worlds. Now I'm in that realm, and I'm in that state of mind where anything is possible, where I can perform whatever ritual, whatever magic I need to practice. That's that world. And once I put out those candles, leave that circle, take off that robe, that switch is back into the off position. Now, that doesn't mean that there's a circumstance may arise where I'm at work, my fellow co-workers driving me fucking nuts, and I just want to strangle them to death, and then I have to go into the restroom and kind of do a little meditation, you know, or something to that effect, to kind of bring myself back into being centered. It doesn't mean that in that moment I'm not sort of performing. I understand that I'm performing magic, but I like to have that on and off switch in a very distinct point. I know it's on, I know it's off. That's why I don't include magic into all my things like hammering two boards together. That's just to offer a counter perspective on it.
Yeah, and I think that's why if you ask around, you'll find everyone pretty much agrees that shamans are quite a bit more insane than witches. And you should,
a little more insane.
We're a little more insane because we don't ever get out of it. And so you never know what's running through our brain. And so you should take that into account if you ask us for advice.
Yeah.
You're basically asking someone who's gone all the way down the rabbit hole and said, you know, it's nice and comfy in here. So
yeah, but the way that you approach that is not different. I mean, I've heard a lot of people, even on YouTube, talking that way, you know, and so that's why I just wanted to offer that counter. So I don't know if it's necessarily just shamans. I think other people do. Other people approach it that way too.
Well, whenever I get on my moped and I know I'm going to be going down the actual highway, I will sometimes, depending upon conditions, if it's a nice, sunny, clear 70-degree day, I'll do a slight protection chant, but I won't go full on, you know, circle around me out. It's cloudy, dark cloudy. I have to go get this thing. It's about the storm. I need back before storms. I will go a full-blown ritual sometimes, you know, circle protection, maybe call the elements, because on a 50cc moped on a highway and it's storming or about to storm, not the safest place to be, so I will go into more of a protection. Does that sound okay?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're just sharing your own experience. You know, I don't like, you know, like like when I talk with Animist, I know that I disagree with him, but I don't think that what he's doing is wrong. It's just a different way that he does it, you know? And I don't know if it's necessarily right. It's just that that's just his experience. That's what he does and how he does it and his experience with it, you know? And so you're offering your perspective on it. So I don't think there's really a right or wrong. I think that maybe if you're driving through traffic and you know, obviously you should stay focused and concentrating on driving, you know. But other than that, I don't think it's wrong. I think that, you know, I know that like one of the very first times I flew, I was very scared and I did all kinds of protection, you know, rituals for myself to, you know, to ensure a safe flight. We'd get turbulence and, you know, we'd get really bad turbulence and I would just pray out to the sylphs. I'd be like, okay, look, you know, just please hold this plane together, get it through. I want to land on the ground again, you know, and, you know, obviously the turbulence went away after a while and, you know, but that's, you know, we just kind of fall back on those things when we can't control the situation. You know, we're going to reach out to what we know, and that is our magic, our prayer, or whatever it is. You know, if it gets us through that, it gets us through it. And by the way, I hate flying. It's scary as shit. But
Yeah, see, to me, now I haven't flown for like 30 years, but to me, it always just seemed like a bus that tilted. So, I kind of saw it that way when I was on my first 727. Actually, they had me up on a plane when I was like a bitty baby, but not really remembering that very well. But they sometimes would fly me around. And while it's weird to be disconnected from the earth by that much space, it's still basically a bus that tilts. Mm-hmm. That's just kind of how I feel about it. And the drivers are like so good at their job. Yeah. And there's really not, at least hopefully, there's not anyone else crowding the lane. So it's definitely out of your hands. But to me, it always seemed kind of humdrum, you know. And that's like it's like certain things about magic. It's like different people just get entirely different impressions of the same experience, and so that is a fundamentally different reality that they're living in. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, riding with some of my relatives while they're driving a car on a perfectly normal state highway is a terrifying experience because I know that their reaction speed is not suitable for the way they position their car on the road. And it's like, oh, horrible flaming death any second now, 10 times a minute. You know, but I don't get along well with busy cities anyway. Yeah. So that does that to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you kind of have to, you get your mind sort of set up for it. And at some point you kind of, you understand that what it is a fear of death. And you kind of come to terms with that. And then you're like, okay, that's it. You know, if I die, I die, you know. And, you know, that essentially that's what it comes down to. But, you know, we all have different ways of coping with fear, getting through stuff, or, you know, things that we do. I mean, nowadays the things that we do are pretty minuscule, you know. Maybe we have to go to a doctor and they're going to use anesthesia to remove whatever, or we have to get into a giant metal airplane and fly halfway around the world in, you know, less than a day. Whereas our ancestors had to deal with, like, you know, plague, robbers, you know, other tribes invading, you know, maybe your neighbor who doesn't even like you. I mean, you had to deal with all of this stuff. And today we're bitching and complaining about, you know, getting through these little tiny things that they would probably have considered an inconvenience. But we look at them as life-changing events, you know. So it's kind of funny. It's just a matter of perspective, really.
Yeah. It's funny because when I'm in the car with somebody who I know has much more faith in the road than I do, it's not exactly fear. It's just that I really don't want to be burned to death. That's just a bad way to go. I don't mind dying. You know, I've done it before. It wasn't that horrible. It's just I don't want to burn first. Burns hurt. I've had 3rd-degree burns. They suck. Yeah. and there's a lot of ways to get a lot of 3rd-degree burns that don't kill you, and that's really worse. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's really not relevant to magic, but just as as a life experience thing, it's one of those things I'm trying to avoid is 3rd-degree burns.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean that's exactly. I mean, I was thinking along the lines of protection magic when I was talking about getting into an airplane or into situations that are out of our control.
Yeah, you want to think good thoughts for the pilot.
Yes, right, exactly. Let's hope he had a good meal. He's in good
exactly.
food.
Right. That he didn't have the toxic chicken or what.
Right, exactly.
He didn't have the fish. Didn't have the fish. The chicken was okay. The fish was bad. All the other old people know that reference. But
yeah, you're really hoping his wife, he had a good time with whatever, he's in a good mood.
or
he
at
has
least
a positive outlook on life.
Yeah, hopefully the co-pilot can take over for him in the event of an emergency. That's just statistics,
Exactly.
But we live in this world where we're all interconnected with all kinds of nature in all kinds of ways, and I've got no problem with going out and sharing the woods with wolves and bears and big cats or whatever, because I understand them and I can see them coming and I know how to deal with them. Things that are more capricious than that, like humans, are a little more problematic. And I've spent too much of my life studying how problematic they can be. So yeah, to me, it's the crazy hairless apes that are the more capricious experience.
The hairless apes.
Even though we're not really, but we look like it. Weird science facts. We have the same number of hair follicles as chimpanzees. It just doesn't grow as thick. It just doesn't. Yeah, apparently. Science. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think, how is that possible? That, ours are just much, much finer.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the science says anyway. I didn't count them.
I believe them. I mean,
yeah. I didn't count them myself. I'm kind of taking that. Some of this science I take on faith because there's no time to go around and count. But somebody, for God's sake, somebody in a science lab counted.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Man, those guys are dedicated to a principle. I consider science a big part of magic. It's the part where you have actually counted and you've said, okay, we got that locked down. We know that now. We can move on. Mm-hmm. So, I like spending more time on the far side of the line where it's a little weirder, but I got an enormous amount of respect for the guys who are trying to make sense out of quantum mechanics,
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I mean, and science evolved from the cult belief. It came from the the experimental method of what happens when we do this. What happens when you mix this chemical with this chemical? That happened.
It's all about famous last words.
I wonder if I could make gold if I mix this with this metal and this chemical with that chemical, and hey, poof, what do you know? It didn't, but this happened instead.
Yeah, an awful lot of those guys died of mercury poisoning trying to figure it out.
But like Sir Isaac Newton, he really, he wrote more books on the occult than he did on science, but people don't like to talk about that too much.
Talking about science and magic, we have the planets, the freaking planets, orbits, lined up for the next several billion years. Their orbits they're charted. The orbits, yet we cannot predict an asteroid that could kill us the next week.
Mm-hmm.
We have the planets' orbits planned out for the next several billion years, but if an asteroid were to swing by and kill us, we can't see that coming. Mm-hmm. Anything that's beyond, like weather, astronomy, I find that extremely fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly. We have a huge blind spot on our planet. We don't always have a certain telescope looking in a certain direction. So, yeah. And luckily we've got huge Jupiter and other planets that, hopefully will be sucking out any asteroids that that might be big enough to come towards us. But yeah, I mean, that's something that could happen. We also get like tiny little asteroids that come into our atmosphere and get burned up. So we're pretty lucky about that. But yeah.
Oh man, a couple of years ago, this is a tangent, but a couple of years ago, I had this amazing experience. I mean, it was literally a spiritual experience. I'm outside in the side yard, and literally, I didn't find out until later that this wasn't the only part of one, but a meteor shot across the sky high enough that I couldn't hear it. It wasn't making a noise wave, but big enough that I could see the core of it. I mean, the thing was like super glowing hot from bouncing off the upper atmosphere. And it streaked in an absolutely straight line across the whole sky from horizon to horizon in like 6 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was literally coming across at astronomical speeds. And I'm out there having my cigarette, I'm going, oh, wow. If that thing had been 0.1 degrees slightly, in a different direction, that would have blown up a whole town. And I went in and told my roommate at the time, I said, hey, Ed, we just almost died. And told him about it. It was a near miss. It had come from the south. And then later I found out that night that they had detected splashdowns in the Atlantic Ocean of other parts of it. It had like broken up. And some of it hit the ocean and some of it streaked right across the earth on a South Pole to North Pole direction where the telescopes don't usually face. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, I've been telling people we need to invest more in space defense. We really need to get out there and make sure these things aren't coming at us, because they could come at us from all kinds of directions where we're not usually looking. So
that's what we'll do with Trump's. That's what we'll do with Trump's Space Force. We'll strap rockets onto Marines. We'll shoot them up into the atmosphere, and they can use lasers to shoot the asteroids as they come in. I'm kidding. Hello? Uh-oh.
Sorry, I was on mute doing a thing on chat.
Oh, okay. That's all right. That's all right.
Anyway, end of story. But just
cut the cord on me.
Sorry, I was getting some cereal.
Yeah, that's okay.
Anyway, I was just, but that was one of those experiences that made it very personal. When you watch something like that had to be the size of an office block, streak across the sky in blazing glory. You go, the dinosaurs ruled this planet for 150 million years, and they never figured out what to do about those things. So I consider it a major aspect of magical morality to protect our planet full of life. Yeah. And get out there and put it on some other planets, because life really is precious. And I think that's an important morality for everybody to understand, is that life is precious. That's why we need to protect it. That's why we need to help people evolve. That's why we need to get out there and have life in other places. That's huge for me as a nature practitioner.
Yeah, but I mean our universe is just, it's beyond comprehension how huge it is. And if we did have an asteroid come make it through the Van Allen belt and then past all the planets and then hit specifically our planet, it's literally astronomical. The odds of that happening. But yeah, it is possible. But hopefully Jupiter will suck it in.
Yeah, it protects us from most of the stuff, and it's been doing that very patiently for a very long time, waiting for something on Earth to get its act together. But we got the forebrains, we got the thumbs, we got the metallurgy. I mean, it's only recently in the last human lifespan that we could even conceive of doing anything about it. But if there's a moral message, I think it's that now that we can, we really ought to. We're spending an awful lot of money on an awful lot of crap that doesn't matter, when we could be putting some more of our collective resources to getting this job done. Mm-hmm. That's my soapbox. Literally, my soapbox is basically SpaceX at this point. It's like, get us out there, get us a little bit more control over what's going on around us, because none of the rest of this crap means anything if we get hit by a planet killer,
Well, what's going to happen is that we're going to spend all this money and all this resources to get these little pods. They're going to go up to the moon or to Mars or wherever, and we're going to build a colony and the colony is going to get to a point where it's actually like self-sufficient. It can actually start, like, you know, people can start having families because they have enough food and enough oxygen to really begin to occupy that planet, and they're going to get hit by a meteorite.
Right when our backup plan gets hit first.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
the Earth will be just fine.
Well, yeah, that's something else that came home to me several years ago when I was doing. Well, George Carlin was talking about it at the same time, so it was also on my mind. Is the Earth is going to be okay until the sun swells up and eats it. We got 1 billion years, but the planet's going to be fine.
We're fucked.
Well, I mean, yeah, but the Earth will essentially be, but the Earth will be consumed by the sun eventually too.
Yeah, eventually. So we got to be out of here by then, or figure out how to move it. There's channels like Isaac Arthur that talk about that all the time when I'm out there doing my sort of science porn, futurism porn. But I think that's something that's also worth putting part of our consciousness into, part of our magical will, is just realizing that we have the opportunity to do something exceptional. And there's probably other life out there on lots of other worlds, but that's not something we can address personally at this point. We can only make our own decisions. And I think taking responsibility for those decisions is what makes a good magical practitioner. You know, the magic only tells us how to do things, you know, or teaches us to learn how to do things. But we do need that other element of what should we do? And I don't think they should be confused, obviously, but I do think that we should be raising ourselves to understand that both of those issues exist simultaneously. That's my soapbox.
Well, all right. Well, let's see. We've gone on for 2 hours now, so I think I'll begin to wrap it up. Let me see. Did I miss any questions from the chat? They're pretty much everybody's been talking amongst themselves.
Yeah, there's so many cool people who show up for this. I know we get a few trolls, but man, everybody who comes here on a regular basis is really pretty cool. We've got a great community out here on YouTube.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes some of those people I don't mind. I'll even fuck with them every so often, you know, because there's nothing that they can say or do that is going to like offend me. Like, you know, this guy was calling me all these names and making fun of me and all this, and I was like, yeah, and so yeah, I have big ears, and you know, I mean, it's like this. It's such a really
Sure.
absurd, ridiculous thing to do, to try and insult people, but you know, they try anyway. What were you gonna say, Leon?
Sorry. Yeah. Very immature way of handling it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you. If I allow myself to be offended by something, then he has power over me, or he has the ability to kind of, you know, troll or push my buttons. But if I don't react to it and I actually just play along with it, I take the power away from him. So that's why I don't mind people like that. But yeah, I mean, occasionally when we get real idiots in there, they're just, you know, whatever, just screwing around, not being serious.
Well, at some point, they're just cluttering up the chat for the other people who are really trying to have a reasonable conversation. So I don't mind whacking them.
Yeah. Well,
they don't offend me. They don't amount to that much. But
well, Kana von Hell, she's got a good suggestion. I like that. Maybe you guys should do atheism and awakening, or secular and spiritual subject discussions. Yeah, I don't mind doing that. It's just it comes down to we have, or maybe I should use I statements. I have subjective beliefs, and I understand that. Atheists are very objective. They, you know, is it testable? Is it factual? Is it, you know, is it repeatable? Is it testable? How they judge, you know, an opinion or a belief or whatever it is. And I understand that my opinions and my beliefs are subjective. So, I mean, we could have a discussion about it, but I already kind of know what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to the same two things. Not to say that those conversations aren't interesting. And, you know, maybe I will. Maybe I'll have somebody who's fairly open and open to a discussion to have on my channel. Or maybe we could, yeah, it's definitely an idea. I like the idea. Just I kind of know where it's going to go.
Yeah, it doesn't end up being a very long conversation unless someone is trying to be an asshole. It only gets stretched out by assholery. Otherwise, we kind of go, well, that's what think. It's okay. That's all right. That's where we stand on these things, And then I throw in a couple of screwballs by saying, yeah, I'm a spiritual, magical person, and I'm also an atheist. And then people kind of scratch their head and don't have anything to say about that. It's like, okay, I guess that's possible. We come down to the I guess that's possible thing pretty quick in those kind of discussions.
Yeah.
Because it's the only place where there's untested waters is where there's literally untested waters, and we still don't know.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I do like that idea. So we'll see. Maybe I can work something out. But Wednesdays is the Patreon hangout, and Saturdays, which I'm going to be starting up again. I don't know if I'll be doing it this Saturday, but I'll put a notice up. But the regular Saturday hangout is for anybody. So maybe I will do. Maybe I'll do that on a Saturday, and I'll invite somebody on, and we can discuss atheism and magic.
I'd love to hear what people have to say about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to join again. This was fun.
Yeah, well, definitely, Leon. If you're a Patreon, you can go to both shows. You can go to the Wednesday one and the Saturday one. So
I was just a normal chatter on Loki's Witches during Heathen and Drunken Heathen. And now I'm on Google Hangout with you guys.
Yeah, cool. Well, Heathen Haven, I'm hoping to hear back from Dorian soon, so we can start planning to have another Heathen Haven. So we are working on that. It's just that we're waiting for all of our members to be on board, so we can check in and see what we want to do with the channel, because we're probably going to hopefully improve the channel somehow. So. All right. Well, cool. I'm going to head and I'm going to go ahead and close it up. If you two want to have a last word, or if you have a channel, or if you have a Twitter page or anything that you want to give a shout out to, now's the time.
I'm pretty reserved on my Twitter, but I might do it sometime if I ever feel up to it.
Well, that's okay. Do you have a YouTube channel?
No, I don't have. My appropriate webcam is my phone.
Okay. All right. Well, that's okay. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to plug your channel if you did. And I know Animist, he's been mulling it over for a while. We'll see what happens with it.
Yeah, I was just telling Stephanie in chat earlier, once I get myself down to the Southeast, when I think I'm going to be there for a good long time, I'm going to sort out the mess and figure out how to make some content for my channel, and maybe have some people on there for some hangouts, do some interviews. It's just a matter of, I've got to move probably next week, and there'll be a while sorting out the mess. So once that happens, I do actually intend to make some content, because I don't know, apparently people think it's a good idea, and there's all these cool people here. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's coming up. I'll figure it out.
Cool. All right. Well, I am working on a video right now, and I'm hoping to put it out by Friday, but we'll see. My schedule's been kind of iffy lately, just because I've just been feeling really drained. But hopefully I'll get back on making videos on a regular basis. But I'm going to try to put out one this Friday. And thank you all for showing up. Leon, thank you for joining. Animus, it's always a pleasure. Always enjoy chatting with you, my friend. And blessed be, and have a good night.
Have a good night, folks. It was great to meet you, Leon, and I love everybody. You guys are awesome. So have a good one, everybody.
All right.
Later.